of France, on the very pinnacle of human greatness, she would naturally be vexed at any remark which would remind her of the recentness of her elevation. Now Mary at one time said, in conversation in the presence of Queen Catherine, that she herself was the descendant of 100 kings. This was perhaps true, but it brought her into direct comparison with Catherine in a point in which the latter was greatly her inferior, and it vexed and mortified Catherine very much to have such a thing said to her by such a child. Mary associated thus during all this time, not only with the Queen and the princesses, but also with the little prince whom she was destined to marry. His name was Francis, but he was commonly called the Dauphin, which was the name by which the oldest son of the King of France was then, and has been since, designated. The origin of this custom was this. About 100 years before the time of which we are speaking, a certain nobleman of high rank, who possessed estates in an ancient province of France called Dauphiny, lost his son and heir. He was overwhelmed with affliction at the loss, and finally bequeathed all his estates to the king and his successors, on condition that the oldest son should bear the title of Dauphin. The grant was accepted, and the oldest son was accordingly so styled from that time forward, from generation to generation. The Dauphin, Francis, was a weak and feeble child, but he was amiable and gentle in his manners, and Mary liked him. She met him often in their walks and rides, and she danced with him at the balls and parties given for her amusement. She knew that he was to be her husband as soon as she was old enough to be married, and he knew that she was to be his wife. It was all decided, and nothing which either of them could say or do would have any influence on the result. Neither of them, however, seemed to have had any desire to change the result. Mary pitied Francis on account of his feeble health, and liked his amiable and gentle disposition, and Francis could not help loving Mary, both on account of the traits of her character and her personal charms. As Mary advanced in years, she grew very beautiful. In some of the great processions and ceremonies the ladies were accustomed to walk, magnificently dressed and carrying torches in their hands. In one of these processions Mary was moving along with the rest, through a crowd of spectators, and the light from her torch fell upon her features and upon her hair in such a manner as to make her appear more beautiful than usual. A woman, standing there, pressed up nearer to her to view her more closely, and seeing how beautiful she was, asked her if she were not an angel. In those days, however, people believed in what is miraculous and supernatural more easily than now, so that it was not very surprising that one should think, in such a case, that an angel from heaven had come down to join the procession. Mary grew up a Catholic, of course. All were Catholics around her. The king and all the royal family were devoted to Catholic observances. The convent, the ceremonies, the daily religious observances enjoined upon her, the splendid churches which she frequented, all tended in their influence to lead her mind away from the Protestant religion which prevailed in her native land, and to make her a Catholic. She remained so throughout her life. There is no doubt that she was conscientious in her attachment to the forms and to the spirit of the Roman Church. At any rate, she was faithful to the ties which her early education imposed upon her, and this fidelity became afterward the source of some of her heaviest calamities and woes. Chapter 3